Welcome to Spiritual Minefield. Today, we're going to do a study on why do some Christians reject the rapture. Now, the reason why I'm coming back to the rapture is because I feel deep down in my heart, God spoke to me and put it there to teach this again, because there's some Christians who are just flat out rejecting his soon return, and they're not being ready. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. So he wants you to understand that he's coming soon. So you have to be prepared. You have to be ready. So I'm going to go over some stuff I have gone before in previous videos, but it'll be a little bit different. So we're going to start. So my main verse is going to be in Matthew 24. It's going to be starting in verse 29, and it will be from 29 to 31. Those are my main verses that we're going to see and try to understand. Okay, so let's start in verse 29. In verse 29, it says, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken." So then here it tells you that right after the 7-year great tribulation, something cataclysmic is going to occur. Some signs in the heavens are going to happen to indicate something. Okay, so let's see what is going to indicate. Verse 30, at that time, okay, when verse 29 occurs, at that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear. Now, we don't know what the sign is. We don't know if the sign is Jesus himself, or is referring to what we just read about the sun being darkened, or about something else that is going to reveal the Son of God coming down. So we don't know exactly. The Bible doesn't stress or reveal what the sign is. So I really can't say, because it just doesn't reveal it. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Verse 39, and he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect, referring to believers, okay, who are alive on earth, from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Okay, now let's look at here this word. Let's look at the word immediately, okay? So the word immediately here suggests that right after the 7-year great tribulation, Jesus will come down from heaven, which is the second coming. So this is not the rapture. This is the second coming. We'll agree on that. So in the rapture, no one can know the day or the hour. I mean, we could know the season that he could be coming soon, but we don't know the exact year. You can't say, the year or a month or days or a specific day or time. But let's say, forget all that. Let's say the year. Can you say Jesus coming in 2024, 2025? Absolutely not, because nobody knows the day or the hour. The day or the hour just means specific, being very specific at a time is coming. So if you say he's coming at 2025, that's being specific. You cannot know that. That's why the rapture, no one can know. But the second coming, you could know, because it says it here. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the 7-year, right after the 7-year ends, then there's the sign in the heavens with the sun and the moon, and then another sign up is going to come that's going to show that Jesus is right. It's about to come at that moment. So we see that you could know the second coming, or at least be very, very close. But with the rapture, you cannot even come close. You could say, well, it seems like we're in the season. Everything is coming to play according to the book of Daniel, Revelation, Zechariah, and so forth. But you cannot say specifically this year or whatever. You cannot say that. Okay, now let's go to 1 Thessalonians. Now remember, so it says here, immediately after the great tribulation, or the 7-year tribulation, Jesus comes. Then it says in verse 31, and he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. So many Christians say, you see, that's the rapture. But then that's a problem, because if you say that's the rapture after the 7-year tribulation, then how can you explain 1 Thessalonians 1:10 and 1 Thessalonians 5:9? So let's look at 1:10. 1:10 says, and to await his Son from heaven, whom he raised from the dead, Jesus, our deliverer, from the coming wrath. So Jesus is coming to deliver the saints from the coming wrath. What is the wrath? The 7-year great tribulation. That's when the Antichrist is in power. That's when he starts to murder Christians, cut off their heads, or they have to receive the mark of the beast, which are not Christians, if they do get it. And then on top of the Antichrist doing all that, you're going to have a lot of plagues from God or his wrath coming upon the earth. So we see the 7-year Great Tribulation, also known as Jacob's trouble, coming upon the whole world. So now, if here in 1 Thessalonians 1:10, it says that we are awaiting the return of Christ because he's going to deliver us from the coming wrath, clearly it teaches on this verse alone that we're not to expect to go through the great tribulation, right? Okay, so now let's look at 1 Thessalonians 5:10. It says, "For God has not appointed us," referring to the saints, "to suffer wrath." What wrath? "But to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ." Well, this is the same book that we just finished looking at, 1:10, same 1 Thessalonians. So we see here the wrath is still in the same bracket as the wrath of 1:10, that's saying that we're not going to go through the wrath of God that's coming upon the whole world, that we're going to be delivered from that wrath. And so 1 Thessalonians 5:10 is the same concept. Now, if you want to know, if you want to be sure that the wrath here is not referring, let's say, to hell or anything like that, then we could look at the context. And I could show you really quickly that is referring to the 7-year Great Tribulation. So we're going to look at the context. So let's see the context. So this is a context here. So we'll start in verse 2. Remember, this verse 9 says that we're not appointed to suffer wrath. So let's look at context here. So verse 2, for you are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying peace and security, destruction will come upon them suddenly, like labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. So we see here that the day of the Lord is always, always in reference to the wrath of God. Now, I'm not going to go to the verses in Isaiah in the Old Testament, which is full of the day of the Lord, and it always displays the wrath of God. But right here, the day of the Lord is in reference to destruction. Destruction. And it says, will come upon them suddenly. So we see that the wrath of the Lord in context is in reference to the day of the Lord. So the day of the Lord is in reference to the wrath of God. They're both two different phrases, which means the same thing. The day of the Lord and the wrath of God are the same thing because of the context. So if you keep reading in verse 9, for God has not appointed us to suffer wrath. Okay, so see right here? You see where it says suffer wrath? Is destruction will come upon them suddenly like labor pains on the pregnant women, and they will not escape. But we are what? We're not to suffer wrath. So it's in the context, the day of the Lord and the wrath of God is the same thing. That's the context. We cannot ignore context, okay? Now, so we see that we are spared from the wrath of God or the day of the Lord. Now, when you go back to Matthew 24, verse 31, and it says, "And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other." What is that? Because if the scripture, you say that is the rapture, then you contradict 1 Thessalonians 1:10 and 1 Thessalonians 5:9. You contradict that. Right? So now let's go and see really quickly. Let's see who Jesus is. Let's see what type of God we worship. Okay. So let's go to Hebrews 13:8. Hebrews 13:8. What does it say about Jesus? It says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus does not change. He has one character. He is the way he is. He does not change even by situations, or Jesus does not change. Now, let's go to the Old Testament and see what God says about how he deals with the wicked and the righteous alike. When God is bringing wrath upon the wicked, let's see if he makes a difference between the wicked and the righteous, or does he punish both at the same time? So let's see. Let's go to Genesis chapter 18, and we're going to start in verse 23. And it says, Abraham stepped forward and said, now, mind you, really quickly, to give you a backdrop here, this is when Lot was in Sodom and Gomorrah, and the Lord with two angels were going down to Sodom to rescue Lot. Okay? So the Lord, Yahweh, sent his two angels, and the Lord stayed behind with Abraham, and the Lord and Abraham were having a discussion about the righteous being in the city that he was going to bring his wrath upon. And Abraham was trying to say, wait a minute, will you truly destroy the righteous with the wicked? And he was referring to to Lot, his nephew. So we're going to see what the Lord respond to Abraham in the sense of bringing his wrath, and if there's righteous there, will he still condemn the righteous with the wicked. So let's see. Okay. So Abraham stepped forward and said, will you really sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Now, mind you, we just read in Hebrews 13:8 that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and forevermore, right? Okay. Verse 24. What if there are 50 righteous ones in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous ones who are there? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous and the wicked are treated alike. Far be it from you, will not the judge of all the earth do what is right? Look at that. Abraham is trying to say that he understands that God would never bring wrath upon the righteous and the wicked, that he would not treat the righteous the same as he's going to treat the wicked with his wrath, with condemnation, with judgment. Okay? Abraham understood that. And Abraham, with boldness, because Abraham knew the truth, Abraham said, far be it from you, referring to the Lord, to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked. So, how can one say that the Lord would bring judgment and wrath upon the righteous and the wicked alike? If you see here, if the Lord is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore, why would you think that in the Old Testament he did it one way and in the New Testament he's going to do it another? The Bible does not teach that. The Bible teaches that the Lord himself is the same throughout the Bible. He does not change. The only thing that changed is revelation. He gave Moses some revelation, and through the prophets, Jeremiah and so forth, he gave more revelation, like Isaiah chapter 53 about the Messiah, the servant to come. He gave more revelation until we come to the New Testament, where the Son of God comes in human flesh and reveals a full revelation. So it's only different in revelation, but not in God's character. He never changes. So we cannot say that in the New Testament, in the Great Tribulation, the saints are going to go through God's wrath, but yet in the Old Testament, Abraham says very clearly that God cannot do such a thing that's not right, to judge the righteous with the wicked. So we see that. Now, how does God answer Abraham? So we're going to see this. So verse 26, this is the Lord's answer. So the Lord replied, if I find 50 righteous ones within the city of Sodom, on their account I will spare the whole city. You see that? The Lord agreed with Abraham. So we see that when Abraham said that God cannot do something that's not right by judging the righteous and the wicked, the Lord himself agreed. He says, if I find 50, I will spare for the sake of 50. So how can we think that he's going to judge the righteous and the wicked in the great tribulation, meaning that he's going to bring his wrath and there's still believers on this earth, and he's going to punish the wicked with all the believers still on earth through the great tribulation? Why would we say that? The only Christians that you find in the great tribulation are the sinners who become Christians during the great tribulation. It doesn't mean that they were Christians before, but they were not Christians. None of them were Christians. Some become Christians during the great tribulation. Because of that, the Lord opens up their eyes and they believe, and he saves them. But it doesn't mean that Christians before will enter the Great Tribulation. That's not taught. And as you can see here, Abraham and the Lord speaks, and Abraham understands that God will never judge the righteous, like he will never judge the wicked and include the righteous with them. And the Lord agreed. Okay, so if the Lord is the same, we cannot forget these verses and then go to the New Testament and say, yeah, the believers will go through the Great Tribulation, because that contradicts even this. Okay, now let's go to, so then what does this mean here then? So verse 31, when it says, and he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. So if this is not the rapture, what is it then? Well, the answer is found in Daniel chapter 7. So in Daniel chapter 7, we're going to start in verse 22. And it says, and to the Ancient of Days, so the Ancient of Days is a reference to Jesus, arrived and pronounced judgment in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for them to possess the kingdom. So we see that now this is the second coming of Jesus. He's coming to pronounce judgment on the Antichrist and his forces, and also to give the kingdoms of the world, meaning authority, to the saints who were being abused by the Antichrist. Okay? Now we're going to jump to 25 to 27. So let's go here from 25 to 27. Let me highlight that real quick. Okay, so we're going to read these right here. Okay, so it says, and he will speak out against the Most High. Now, this is a reference to the Antichrist, cursing God and the saints and the angels. The Most High and oppress the saints of the Most High, intending to change the appointed times and laws. And the saints will be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time. You find that in Revelation chapter 13. So the Antichrist will conquer the saints, and the saints will have to suffer. Some will get their heads cut off, and others will be thrown in prison. And that's going to, and then the third could be those who are scattered, hiding, and don't get caught, Okay. And also included here is Daniel chapter 12, where the Jews run to the wilderness for 3.5 years, and they're protected by the Lord from the dragon and from the Antichrist. So those are the saints also. Those are included. Okay, now, verse 26. So after the 3.5 years, right? Jesus comes, fights the Antichrist, fights his army, and then all the saints resurrect. Those who are dead resurrect. Those who are in heaven come down, and then those who are alive, this is what happens. Okay, and this goes back to Matthew 24:31. This is a reference to the saints who are alive during the Great Tribulation who do not die. Now watch what happens. Let's go to verse 26. But the court will convene and his dominion will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. Referring to the Antichrist, he's going to lose basically. Then the sovereignty, dominion, and greatness of the kingdoms under all of heaven. Okay, these are high positions and authority in on the earth. Okay, will be given to the people. What people? The saints of the Most High. So when Jesus comes, those who are being persecuted by the Antichrist, Jesus will send out. See, this is a thing right here. Verse 31. Okay, you see this verse right here? It says, and he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. For what? So he's going to collect all the saints. So immediately after the tribulation of those days, Jesus comes, defeats the Antichrist, his army. Then he's going to send out his angels, and he's going to get all the Christians, especially the Jews in the wilderness who survived the Great Tribulation. He's going to gather them to himself. And then what? He's going to do what? Under all of heaven will be given to the people, meaning the kingdoms under all of heaven will be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. So then he gathers all the Christians, and then he's going to give them authority and dominion over certain parts of the world. So they will represent Jesus on the whole planet for 1,000 years. His kingdom, referring to Jesus, will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will serve and obey him. So we see that Matthew 24:31, when Jesus comes and sends out his angels, is to collect the Christians who are alive to bring them to Jerusalem, where Jesus is going to reign, to give him their reward. Whatever they did for Jesus on earth, that's going to be the reward. Not only them, but the saints who come with Jesus and the saints who get beheaded, who resurrect. All of them who participates is called the first resurrection. So blessed is he who partakes in the first resurrection. That's in reference to rule with Christ, with your spiritual body for 1,000 years. Okay, so then now we understand what Matthew 24:31 says. This is not to suggest the rapture. This is to suggest the ingathering of the saints and of the Jews who are believers in Jesus Christ, to bring them to Jesus, in Jerusalem, so that Jesus can be bestowed on them authority to rule in the earth alongside Jesus. Okay, now let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8. Look what it says. From now on, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. On what day? On the return of Christ. This is in reference to the rapture. Look at this. And not only to me, but look at this, but to all who crave his appearing. You see that? All who crave his appearing, meaning he's looking forward to the coming of Jesus Christ. So what's the Greek word for crave? So I have it here. See right here, Greek word. So let's look at it. The Greek word is agapao. Agapao, and it means to love, wish well to, take pleasure in, long for, denotes the love of reason, esteem. So we see here that you have a great love for the appearing of Jesus Christ. So when Christians say that the rapture is a lie, oh, why you Christians want to wait for Jesus coming? He's never going to come. I mean, when you hear that, do you Do you hear love for Christ? Why would someone say that the coming of the Lord is such a bad thing for a Christian? Because here it says in 2 Timothy 4:8, it says this. It says, who crave his appearing. So apparently they don't crave the appearing if they're so much against the rapture. It's almost like to disdain the coming of Jesus Christ. It's just disdain for Jesus to come and rapture everybody out. It's like a disdain to meet Jesus in the air and to always be where he's at. Now I'm going to show you really quickly in Matthew 24. Look at this. So Matthew 24, I'm going to show you who are the ones that disdain Jesus. Why they disdain Jesus? I'm not going to say all of them are like that. All Christians are, who are against the rapture. I'm not going to say all of them are like that, but there's a lot of them like that. And I'm going to show what I mean. So for this, we go to Matthew 24, 48 to 51. Okay, so look at this right here. Now, this is not me saying this. This is the scriptures. Okay. But suppose that servant is wicked and says in his heart, my master, referring to Christ, will be away a long time. He's not coming, meaning these people do not believe in the imminent return of Jesus Christ. The rapture is the imminent return of Jesus. He could come any moment. They do not believe that. So look what it says about people like that. And he begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards, meaning since he doesn't think that Jesus is coming any moment, he's just a long way off because he's not in the great tribulation. What happens? He starts to become lazy and drifts to live in sin, meaning to start living in the world, and he's going to start doing things that displeases God. Verse 50, the master of that servant will come on a day he does not expect. Remember, we can never expect the rapture because no one knows the day or the hour. And at an hour he does not anticipate. Then he will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Basically, it shows that this person was never a Christian. Why? Because he never craved the return of Jesus Christ, like 2 Timothy 4:8 that we just read here. Look at this. And not only to me, but to all who crave his appearing. So when a person doesn't crave the coming of the Lord, that shows you that they must have a spiritual problem. And by the way, I looked at this. I went to a lot of sites like the Catholic Church, the Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormonism, Seventh-day Adventists. I went to those websites, and you know what all of them agree in? They all agree on a post-tribulational rapture. They do not agree on a pre-tribulational rapture. They do not believe in a rapture. So as these cults reject the rapture of the church, imagine you're believing exactly what they believe. The Catholic believe that, the Mormons believe that, the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that. They don't believe in a rapture. Why is that? If their religion is satanic, if they believe in a false Jesus and their whole theology is completely off, and they believe that the rapture is not true, that there's no such thing as rapture, imagine if you're a Christian and you reject the rapture, you are agreeing with the Mormon, Jehovah's Witnesses, a Catholic. You're agreeing with these people who believe in a different Christ. You think Satan is going to teach the truth? No. He's going to bring a little truth with a lie, which is going to mess up the whole truth. Remember, if you have truth with lie, it's no longer the truth anymore. It's already tainted. It's no good anymore. It can't save you, can't do nothing good. That's what Satan does. He will not speak the truth. He will never teach the truth. So you see here that the people who reject the rapture, most likely because they don't have the Holy Spirit, they don't desire Jesus Christ. They don't desire to see Jesus Christ. You know, one of them comes to mind, Dr. James White. Dr. James White not only rejects the rapture of the church, but he mocks the Christians. He even mocks saying, oh, look at these Christians believe that Israel since 1948 is some fulfilled prophecy. He even mocks the fulfilled prophecy that the Bible teaches about the end times that Israel will come back to the land. He mocks that. Why? Because he doesn't have a desire. I mean, you see James White, he's full of tattoos. He looks just like the world. He started good, clean, but now what he's doing, putting tattoos, he's teaching erroneous theology and eschatology, erroneous eschatology. So what does it tell you? Many people love this world. That's why they cannot believe in the rapture, because they want to stay here. They love this world. But Christians, true Christians with the Holy Spirit, love Jesus Christ and heaven. See, that's our true home. Our true home is not in this world. It's in heaven. We desire Jesus Christ to come today, if possible. I desire that. Why? Because I want to be where Jesus is at. Remember, if you believe in a rapture, that means that you know that you always have to be prepared because he's going to come at a time you do not expect, and you want to be ready. So when Jesus Christ come, you're living a life of holiness and of righteousness because you don't want to be living in sin. You want to be living according to God's will. So those who do not believe in the rapture, most likely, a lot of them could be ignorance, and others could be that they don't have the Holy Spirit. So that's what that could be. And it's important to believe in the rapture because it's going to keep you in right steps with the Lord because you know he could come any moment. Thank you for listening.